Thanks for tuning in to the Drive On podcast, where we're focused on giving hope and strength to the entire military community. Whether you're a veteran, active duty, guard, reserve, or a family member, this podcast will share inspirational stories and resources that are useful to you. I'm your host, Scott DeLucio, and now let's get on with the show. Hey everyone, welcome back to Drive On. I'm your host, Scott DeLucio, and today my guest is Doug Fleming. Doug is a Navy veteran and author of the book A Date with Suicide. In his book and a series of articles, Doug addresses the critical issue of veteran suicide by exploring what it means to be a veteran, the trauma from service, transitioning out of service, and telling your story. And today we'll dive into his insights on these topics and discuss how we can combat the growing issue of veteran suicide. So before we get into that, Doug, welcome to the show. In the intro there, I kind of had a little flub with the name there. Your author name is D. Paul Fleming, and your first name, Doug, is what we're going by, but I slipped up and threw the Paul in there as well. So welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
It's all good, Scott. So you did a great job on the intro. Thank you much.
I did up until that one point, and then I kind of had to catch myself. So I guess I had to explain why I messed that up for the listeners. But we got through it anyways. So tell us a little bit about yourself and the book that you wrote, A Date with Suicide. Kind of give us some of the backstory and kind of what led up to writing the book.
Yeah, so it's kind of a loaded question. Let me see if I can cliff note it.
Sure.
Right. So I've been dealing with mental health issues for the better part of my life, and it was only about 10 years ago or so that I started really coming to terms with severe PTSD and spending far too many nights with the opportunity and intent to kill myself. And finally I got to a point where I said, listen, I've either got to finish this and end my life, or I've got to find peace. So that is the kind of precursor to how I ended up writing books, which again, I never thought I would, but I'm in that community of vets that have struggled with mental health issues, and I'm pre 9/11 vet and post Vietnam vet. So guys like us fall into a wheelhouse of, kind of the bottom of the cracker barrel, if you will. But following on the heels of what the Vietnam veterans did to give all veterans better access to things like the VA and mental health, I'm working hard to build on their legacy to help my generation and the post 9/11 generation deal with the things that are coming at us at like a train, like a freight train, without brakes. Not sure how many folks realize it, but 50 veterans a day commit suicide. It's just a number that statistically we can show, but the reality is I personally believe it's closer to 100 veterans a day commit suicide.
Yeah. That number, that there's the catchy number that gets thrown around, the 22 a day, that, everyone kind of relates with. I've always said, whatever that number is, I feel like it's higher. It's not that I want it to be, obviously. I want it to be zero. But I feel like whatever gets reported, maybe a little tinfoil hat situation going on here, but whatever is being reported is not an accurate number. And so, when you have that many people, whether it's 22, whether it's 50, whether it's 100, when you have that many people who are coming to that decision in their life, that point in their life where that just is the option that they take, you got a problem. And something needs to be done, and that's why this show exists. We want to help people get through these dark times. We all have times in our lives that are harder than others, and sometimes we need a little help. And I've needed it, you've needed it, other people have needed it. um, but sometimes you just don't know where to start. You don't know where to even turn and who to ask, right? And you coming from uh the that in between era, post Vietnam, pre 9/11, um I've heard from a lot of guys who served during that time period, um who kind of felt like the same way, where they were kind of just in that bottom of the barrel, like not looked at as great as they like maybe other veterans had been looked at, but also not as bad as some of the others, like in the Vietnam era, where the way they were treated when they got back. But um, you talk about being a veteran, and what does that mean for somebody? What does that mean to you as far as being a veteran coming from your era? What does that label mean for you, and how do you kind of identify with that?
Yeah. So one of the topics I bring up early in the book, A Date with Suicide, I bring it up early, and I refer to it often because how we feel as veterans affects our mental health.
Mhm.
And when I came out of the service, you didn't really tell people you were a veteran. You kept it kind of in hush whispers. And, again, we were dealing with the post Vietnam, and I'm not trying to equate my experience to Vietnam veterans coming home and being treated pretty violently, to be honest. But I lived through that, and I watched that, and I dealt with a lot of vets that were closer to my age, that would tell us how they were treated in firsthand accounts. So they told you, because don't tell people you're a veteran. Then when
Right.
9/11 happened, the world changed, and all of a sudden it was not just popular to be a veteran, but it was a cool thing, and that's kind of where the thank you for your service blossom, in my opinion. Okay,
Sure.
so that shift is happening again now, where it's dipping back into the Vietnam era mentality, where people are starting to kind of not be so friendly towards veterans. For me, I kind of lost a piece of who I am when I left the military, and then was kind of poo-pooed by the veterans world. All right, it's a big thing to be one of the 1% of the population that serves this country. And when you do serve the country and then you don't feel the pride of being a veteran, it takes a toll on you. And it's not just a physical toll, but a mental toll, an emotional toll, and the toughest one of all, a spiritual toll.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. And when you serve, when you're either in combat or even stateside, when you're serving with people, you have that group of people, that camaraderie with those people that you served with. And it's always the guy to your left, the guy to your right, and you're looking out for each other. But then when you have an experience like you did, where you got out and then didn't really fit in with that community, or didn't feel like you fit in with that community of other veterans, um, it's like, well, who like who am I now? If I don't fit in with the people who are serving, and I don't fit in with the people who are not serving anymore, then where do I fit in? And yeah, I could see how that could definitely take a toll on that identity. Um, because as you're serving, um, you do that does become a piece of you. Whether whatever branch you might serve in, that becomes a piece of who you are. And then you take off that uniform for the last time, and you got to kind of fill that hole with something, right? Yeah.
Finding a purpose post military is one of the biggest talking points that I put out there, along with anybody else trying to help vets, and family members of vets understand mental health. But losing your purpose post-military and trying to reclaim an identity, reposition yourself, it becomes a struggle for a lot of us. And for me, I don't fit into the civilian world, and I've given up trying to fit in. And more importantly, in talking with others, I keep saying the same thing. It's like, listen, we're veterans. We're kind of our own group. It's
Mhm.
okay not to fit in with civilians. And it's okay not to fit in with, other vets. But at the same breath, we all put the flag on our shoulder. We all did the things that we said we were going to do and gave up a portion of our lives, whether it was a few years or 20 plus, right? We're
Yeah.
veteran. And for me, we've got to stop trying to fit into something that we're simply not. It's like trying to get a civilian to say, "Well, I'm gonna stop being a civilian and I'm gonna be a military person." Well, no, because you have to go through all those experiences to qualify, so to speak, right? So
Right.
why are we trying to put that square peg into the round hole and be part of, feel like a civilian? We're not. We need to be veterans, we need to feel like veterans. We need to accept the way the civilians act. And, a lot of them are asking us, how do we interact with you now? And we're making headway in that sense. Like when veterans want to talk, they're going to ask, or they're going to tell you, but they don't want you to they don't want you to respond. They don't want you to judge us. They just want to be heard. And that's one of the big gaps between civilians and veterans.
Mm. Yeah, I could see that, for sure. And we definitely don't. I don't think we definitely don't want civilians telling us how we should or shouldn't feel, and how we
And yet
should.
they do,
Yeah, and then they do, right? And we get that experience, and it's like, well, who the hell are you to tell me who I feel, or how should feel? Um,
in,
s-
in, in fairness, Scott, they're coming at it from a civilian. And to give all of our civilian brothers credit, they want to come forward to help.
yeah,
When you see somebody hurting, people either do this or they step forward to help, right? They see somebody missing an arm, for an example. They walk over and they want to touch your other arm. It's like, look, don't touch me, man. Right?
yeah,
Well, that's coming from fear, because when people don't understand something, they naturally want to say something like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" Right? They just don't understand it. And that's
mhm,
again a gap in communication between veterans and civilians. And which
sure,
is going to be easier, to teach veterans how to understand civilians or to teach civilians how to understand veterans?
yeah. It would, in my estimation, I would guess it would probably be easier to teach veterans how to understand civilians, right? Because I mean, we've all been a civilian at one point or another, right? Up until at least 18, we were civilians. In some cases, maybe even later. Um, but no civilians had been military at all, and so they don't have that experience. And so that's my thought on that. Is that I'm guessing based on your reaction, that's your thought as well.
Right? Again, it's common sense and almost a no-brainer.
Sure.
So it's so much easier for me to help veterans by saying, Stop trying to be a veteran, and I mean a civilian, and stop trying to figure civilians out. All right. Just kind of explain to them what it's like to be you, and tell them, I'm not looking for your judgment and I'm not looking for your responses. You asked a question, I gave you the answer. That was it. That was
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly, and it should just be that simple, and kinda leave it at that.
Well, if we can get 330 million civilians to show up for your podcast, right? We can
Right.
educate, get
I
them
mean,
straight.
this problem we'd have this problem licked in no time.
Well, then come on, Scott. Get up there to 330 million Americans.
I'm
All
just gonna
on your shoulders there, Scott.
I'm no pressure, but I'm just gonna, like, rent a truck and just drive it around the country, just playing this episode and listen to this, and you gotta understand it, and then,
I give you, I
yeah,
give you, I give you a month, but you got to have it done.
no pressure. Alright, let's kinda, uh, maybe go to a problem that's a little more, easily solvable than me getting 330 million people to listen to this episode. Um, but in all seriousness, there are veterans, service members, people who um, are in, I just call it the military community, that have experienced a bunch of different types of traumas. Um, some related to combat, some not so much. But there's a lot of different types of trauma that are out there. Um, I would imagine, and I don't know for sure, that I would imagine that some may have more correlation to a risk for suicide, or at least suicide attempts. Is there any data on that, or anything that you have any kind of background on as far as that goes?
Yeah. So, again, when we're talking within the veterans community, it's a lot easier to make these points.
Sure.
Getting civilians to understand it gets a little more tricky. So I try to do it like this. It takes between 8 and 10 military people to get one soldier in the field pointing a weapon downrange. Okay. So roughly 8 to 10, right? Could
Hmm.
be seven, could be 12, but if it takes all that to field one combat soldier, how can our statistics be north of 50 suicides a day? Because we can't be losing 50 combat veterans a day, right?
Right.
Well, and back when the number was 22, why is it going up? Okay, well, all right, post wars and everything else, but look at the demographics of who the suicides are. The majority of suicides are men, white men over 60. Okay.
Yeah.
Now this is out of control. Now you'd think this would be a new phenomenon, but it's not. Rick Weidman, number two at VVA, would tell me time and time again at these vet force meetings that Vietnam era veterans over 60 were the highest rate for suicide. And you kind of go, well, why? And the answer is rather simple. Once we get on in years and the world around us starts slowing down, guess what we've got time to do? Think.
Think.
So let me give
Yeah.
you an example of one guy that just recently killed himself. Okay, let me give you two. One's a Navy SEAL, highly trained, all the skills in the world, got sick, said I had enough, shot himself in the heart. Okay. Didn't want people to deal with it. Now you kind of got to look at that one with a puzzled look. Okay. Then there's the kid that was unloading metal boxes in with flags in Maryland. He couldn't take it. He did it for almost 2 years straight, and that was it. All right. Got out of the military, killed himself shortly thereafter, left a note reflecting it, and it devastated his family, and he was never in combat. I'll give you one more example. When I was in boot camp, and I write about this in the book, boot camp, I had to deal with a shipmate who, at 0 dark 30, broke his bick apart and slashed his wrist. There was blood everywhere. I tell the story in the book to make this point. We will never understand another person's trauma. You know, getting
Mhm.
yelled at boot camp for me I was bored in boot camp, to be honest. Okay. But the effect that it had on others, to the point of this one kid from the Bronx, this was a tough kid, right? I never thought he would do it. But when he tried to kill himself in the middle of the night in the 4 hours of sleep that you get, I thought then, wow, man, what a coward, right? But as
Yeah.
I got older and now I'm looking back on it, I realized that the trauma that he went through was so much that he couldn't take it anymore. He could have just stood up and said, I quit. I go AWOL. But he had to take it to the point of suicide. So we can't judge another person's trauma. And more importantly, it doesn't matter what job you've done in the military. It could have been boot camp that caused something to switch, right? Or it
Yep.
could have been some of the other stories I tell in the book about having to be perfectly groomed from start to finish. Okay. Sometimes those things are traumatic to other people to the point of it rewires their brain.
Mhm.
And let me hit the last point. Most
Sure.
folks don't know this. The third highest suicide rate is women, female veterans. Right now, 20% of the military is made up of women, right? And yet they're the third highest suicide rate.
Which that is actually uh, shockingly high when you think about it. If only a fifth of the military uh, is women, and they're the third highest demographic for for that suicide number, that that's pretty high. Um, you know, and that might need some addressing. And there I'm sure there's other issues too with women veterans that may, I don't want to say men don't have the same issues, but maybe not at the same rate. There's some sexual trauma that probably takes place that often with women than with men, and that might be a contributing factor. There might be some other things as well. You know, I don't know. I'm not a woman, so I
If I
can't
may,
speak to that. Yeah, but you go ahead.
if I may, the most recent DOD report released showed 36,000 reported cases of sexual abuse, anything from harassment to outright rape. 36,000 in a 1 year period. Now, the female vets that I talked to, including Christine Walker, who owns At Ease Veterans Magazine, and others, all tell me the same thing. Listen, the majority of those reports don't, the majority of those incidences don't get reported. So if they have 36,000 reports, what's the actual number? Okay. Now, 2.5 or 2.4% of that report is actually males reporting sexual trauma. And what I didn't know until on a veterans event last week was the amount of men who are raped in the military. I didn't even know that existed until I
Right.
sat down with a group of folks that had been heavily engaged in that. So that kind of caught me wildly off guard.
Yeah. I know that it does happen. I didn't know the rate of how frequent that it happened, but um, yeah, that's something that you don't think about very often. And so there's I guess a wide range of issues, and for people who may or may not have even served in combat, like you were saying before, it takes 8 to 10 soldiers to get one soldier pointing a rifle down range in a combat zone. Well, okay, there's a lot more people who are not in a combat position than there are who are in a combat position, and so those people are dealing with something too. So it's not just the effects of combat, based on those numbers. Um, I gotta imagine one thing that we all have in common, any veteran, there's one thing that we do have in common, it's transitioning out of the military. That, like you said, is a significant challenge. It was for you. What are some of the things that you've seen that people have kinda dealt with in that transition, and how can they address them to kinda make that transition a little bit easier?
Well, about a year ago, I was on a podcast with a gentleman who's got Ryan, who does everlasting veteran. He does a great job, like you do, on getting the issues out there. And his focus was on transition. I
Mhm.
spent a hard year before releasing the book researching it. Um, for my transition, I didn't know I was homeless. I left the military. I was homeless. I lived on a triple decker back porch in Boston with a guy I grew up with who was a 5 year deal up at Northeastern in Boston. I didn't consider myself homeless, but I was. I was living in my truck. I was living on a back porch. Okay. And it wasn't the first time that I'd been homeless. So until I really kind of drew back and started looking into this transition, it kind of dawned on me. I stuffed deep the transition that I had from the Navy because, man, when I left that boat, they stripped my identity. I was a critical part of the greatest submarine in the history of the world, right? The USS Dallas, the boat made fancy or famous by Tom Clancy, right? I was an integral part of that boat and deployed for 2+ years on a 3 year ride on that vessel. And once I crossed that gangplank for the last time, I was escorted off the base by two 18-year-old kids who, didn't know anything, right? And shoved me, I didn't shove me, but, kind of made sure I was through the gate. Once I was on the other side and I'm looking around, I'm like, now what do I do? Right?
Yeah.
All of my existence to that point in my life was stripped from me. And I'm at zero. And now I've got to go start and figure this thing out. Okay. I have a deep faith, so that kind of helped me along. But far too many guys get caught in that transition and it being stripped. You lose your identity, you lose your purpose, you lose your focus, and most importantly, you lose your safety. Well, what do I mean by safety? Well, you said it, Scott. Your brother to your left, your brother to your right, your sister in front of you, doesn't, right?
Yeah.
Wherever you are, you're surrounded. No matter what base you walk on, you've got that same mentality. Once you leave, all that's gone. That's another piece that weighs in on your path to a date with suicide.
Mhm. Yeah, and there's other components, safety components as well that are built into military life. You have a steady paycheck coming in. You know, every month you know you're getting paid, and you know that your medical issues are being taken care of, and housing and food, and there's a lot of things that are just kind of taken care of for you. Now, I'm not saying that you're getting paid extravagantly, as a soldier, as a sailor, as a, whatever branch you're in. You're not it's We can leave that debate for another day for, are we getting paid enough in the military? But um as long as you set a budget and you stick to it and you live within those means, you know that money is coming in.
How many 23-year-olds have you met that went from, 17, joined the military, 22, 23 coming out that understand the budget,
uh, probably zero.
right?
Right.
So even figuring out a checking account and bills and how to turn on electrical power and all of this crap that civilians kind of pick up the phone and call mom and say, hey, we're all good, right? Guys
Yeah.
coming out of the military, we're not real good at picking up the phone and asking for help, are we?
No. No. No, and quite frankly, we're trained to be the helpers, the people who go out and save the day and go, uh, and it's glorified in the movies and everything too. You don't see someone, the hero of the movie, go and pick up the phone and call, "Hey, I need help. I don't know how to do this thing." No, they
Right?
they figure it out. They MacGyver it or whatever. They figure it out, right? Um,
Or until they drowned trying,
Yeah, yeah, and that's glorified too in the movies. It's like, well, they did it all. They did everything that they possibly could, and they fought to the bitter end until till they couldn't fight anymore. And that's looked at as like a positive, virtuous type thing. But is it? I don't know. I think if you had if you set your ego aside and had the ability to pick up the phone and call somebody else or get some other assistance in there, you might have been able to do more, but you gotta be able to put that ego aside too, right?
yeah, there's a lot to it. There's a
There
lot
is.
to it, right?
Yeah, and I'm sure I'm oversimplifying it too for, purposes of simplicity here with the show. We're not trying to make this a 10-hour long show where we dive into every conceivable uh aspect of this, but I think the point is still valid. You know, um, and just knowing that there are people there to who can help you, who are ready, willing, able to help you with whatever it is that you might be going through. I think that's important to point out there. Um, you do it in so many other aspects of your life. Um, you ask for help, whether you think of it as asking for help or not, but you ask for help when you go to the mechanic with your car and you get your car serviced. You're asking somebody else for help, but a lot of times we don't look at it the same way when we go and need like mental health help. We do it with our doctors. If we have, something that's bothering us, we go to the doctor and we get that checked out by the doctor, or we break a leg or something, we go to the doctor and we get it fixed. Yeah, we ask for help. Okay, well, why can't we do that for our mental health as well? You know?
Yeah, and the biggest one is a single word, anger.
Mm.
Have you ever met a veteran that you couldn't see the anger in him or her?
Yeah, I mean, it's in there. I mean, some do a better job at hiding it than others, but
Yeah,
it's there.
right. But
Yeah.
poke them, provoke them a little bit. Again, veterans won't do it to other vets because they know. But when you
Yeah.
see a civilian poking at somebody, what's wrong? What's the matter? What are you doing? Okay, man, it spirals quickly. right? So why are we angry? In A Date with Suicide, it's book one of roughly a 10-book series. I've got 40 topics laid out that I've got to get through. And anger is going to lead book two. All right. Why? Well, anger again is every veteran I talk to, there are some have their anger here, some are here, and some are just simmering. Well, it's like, and the question becomes why? In the book, which focuses on answering two questions: what happened to me and why? Everything we're looking at as veterans, we keep going back to those same two questions, right? So why are we angry? Well, let's think about it for a moment. What happens from the time that bus pulls up to that recruit command and somebody pops on board and starts what? Handing out flowers and daisies and, pretty invitations to please stop by for chow in the morning, right? No, they start pissing you off,
Right.
right? That- Again, how are you going to get people to do their job if you can't get them to be motivated? And what's the greatest motivator of all? Anger.
Anchor.
You're not going to kill somebody if you like them. It's not an easy thing to do, right?
Right.
But if you get that anger going and you've got to go into combat or any other piece of the military, the anger is the motivator. The anger is the personal weapon of a warrior. Well, what we don't get taught is to deprogram that anger, right? So you
Yeah.
could be the greatest wallflower in the world. Go, I dare you, go through boot camp. Go do a couple years in the military, right? Put yourself in some deployments and some hot spots, right? I dare you not to come back angry. Again, you could just be angry at the way the whole thing was handled. You could be angry at a commander's decision, right? I'm not going to do this. Well, then you're going to Leavenworth or you're going to get shot.
Right.
So the anger is our biggest weapon, but it's also our biggest Achilles heel. It is what did Dickinson said, the best of times, the worst of times, right? The worst possible thing and yet the best possible thing, because to this day, I don't know a civilian that wouldn't duck for cover behind a veteran who's sporting a temper if bullets were flying,
Right.
right?
Right. Um, yeah. And I think they do a great job at teaching you to turn that anger on. Um, they do a terrible job at teaching you how to turn it off. And when I say that, like, turn that anger off, turn off all the things that are associated with your military service, all the things that go with it. When you take that uniform off, you're no longer a soldier, a sailor, marine, an airman. You're no longer any of that. How do you get back into the civilian world, and how do you turn that off? And look at those two questions that you mentioned. What happened to me, and why? And try to figure out, okay, what makes me tick? Why am I the way that I am right now? What happened? Um, and I know for me, looking at me from the time that I joined the military to the time I got out, it, two different people. Um, it was not uh, it was not the greatest of revelations when I realized that, but it was like, yeah, I'm definitely not the same person that I was when I first joined. Um, and so, yeah, maybe those are great questions to reflect on. It's like, what happened in that time period? There had to be something. It wasn't just me getting older and grumpier, because I wasn't even in that long, to be that much older, to be, an old grumpy guy or whatever. But we do maybe have to examine those questions on our, on each individual basis. Um, Now, y- you told your story, and you're telling your story, um, and you mentioned in the early on in the episode how you're kind of a part of a kind of a community, I guess, of people who are writing their stories and telling them that way. Um, how does telling the story, in your opinion, sharing your experiences and things like that, help not only you but help other veterans in their journey?
Yeah. So the greatest thing a veteran can do for him or herself, is to tell your story. Tell your story. It's one of the things that I fought for, what, 40 years in
Mm,
the veteran community, right? I did 10 or 20 years in and out of the VA fighting through that system. I mean, I'm still in it, but not the same way. Once we got choice and I can go to private doctors.
Sure.
But um, telling your story is with for me. It when I wrote my first book, 2,442 Steps to Crazy, I had to tell a story of my childhood in order for me to personally get to be able to start telling stories like in boot camp when a guy tried to kill himself. Okay. When I started telling these stories, I actually cried for the first time that I can ever remember, short of being, a very small kid,
Hmm.
maybe 8 or 10 for my guess. The weight that came off, and it wasn't, just sat down, wrote, and then boom, I was fine. It was a piece here and a piece here and a piece there, and it like processed right in reverse, deprogrammed. Maybe can I use that word?
Yeah.
But the more I wrote, and I got to tell you, my first book, I wrote it 5, 6 times, threw the thing away, and this last book here, the Date with Suicide, I think I wrote that thing 4 times before I finally could have the courage to finish the book and put it out there because it is literally telling your deepest, darkest secrets. Now, does everybody got to do that? No, I just believe I'm called to take it to that level. I'm reading a book. I just finished a book by Donald Dunn, did 20 plus, 5 plus years playing over in Iraq and Afghanistan. And his book is unlike my book. My book's got some thickness to it. His book is about a quarter of that, and it makes 10,000 more points than mine does. Okay. Echoes of a Warrior. I
Yep.
got to put down here, but Echoes of something by Donald Dunn. It's an awesome, awesome book. It is short chapters, 3, 4 pages, and he is telling his story. Okay. He doesn't get into the blood and the guts and all that crap, but he hits the stuff that we as veterans, especially we as veterans with mental health issues, needed to hear. And here's the second part. If you're a family member or a friend of a veteran, I encourage you to read these books because A Date with Suicide and Don Dunn's book, that will give you insight into what's happening inside the mind and the world of a veteran.
Yeah. And to your point earlier, like that will be helpful for other people who are trying to figure out what's going on with this person who is in my life. Maybe it's a loved one, maybe it's a coworker or a neighbor or something. Why is this person the way that they are? Why aren't they, quote unquote normal? Whatever the hell that means. But you know, maybe having some insight, through books like yours and Donald Dunn's book that you mentioned. He was actually on the show a couple months ago, talking about his story and everything. And part of the reason why I have folks like you on the show is to share some of this background too, because it's not just veterans who listen to the show, or they're um, service members. There are family members, there's neighbors and coworkers and other people who have a veteran in their life, and they want to understand what's going on. How can I help this person? What can I do to support them? um, and you brought up a bunch of great points here, and it helps to just give a little bit of insight without having to go through it yourself, because I don't want everybody throughout the country to have to join the military just to understand why are all these people who were in the military coming out kind of messed up. 'Cause that I think might end up making the problem, well, it might end up making the problem worse, or there might just be so many people who are coming out that way that finally someone says, "Hey, we got to do something about this." Hopefully it doesn't get to that point, but regardless, I think telling these stories is a great step, and I like how you put that there.
Yeah.
Um,
Let me jump in there. Every
yeah,
time you tell your story, just like you just did right there, you're helping veterans and family members, okay, and relatives or friends of veterans. Every time you tell your story.
yeah, every time. And it may just be one person who you're helping this time. We might have, say, only one person listens to this episode, which I know that's not going to be the case, but um, if that one person hears a story and takes something away from it, even if that was true, if even if it was just the one person, I don't know, I still chalk it up as mission accomplished. Like we still reach somebody. I still have 329,999 however many more thousand people to
The end of the
go
month.
from there by the end of the month, but it's a good first step. You gotta start
Let me
somewhere, right?
let me jump on that, Scott.
Yeah.
Look at it. Let's look at this thing in reverse. And this is what I do. And I look at my fellow vets in the eye and I say, listen, I don't think committing suicide is a selfish act. All right. I live in so much pain that, I'm not going to kill myself. But when I die, I'm like, all right, I'm not in pain anymore. Physical, mental, emotional. It's a lot different than it was with the work I've been doing. But, oh my God, I lost my train. Oh, oh my God, here's what I was saying. Started to get
Sure.
funny on a serious topic, right? So when one veteran kills himself, how many people does that affect? Just one. Let's take that conversation and reverse it, right? If today's episode helps one person,
Mhm.
let's compare it to a veteran committing suicide. Around that veteran is at least 50 people, right?
Oh, easy.
Relatives, family members, cousins, friends. Okay, could be hundreds,
Yeah.
right? So every time one veteran, 50 a day committing suicide, 50 people, right? And then how far does that mushroom grow? Now put one in every single state in the United States. Every single day, somebody is committing. Well, the reverse must be true, right? If you're helping one person, then who are they helping because they're having the conversation? As I
Mhm.
say, if you don't know a veteran who committed suicide, give it a day. You will. Okay. But if we help one person in that same, stone in the middle of the pond effect, it is huge. May take a little bit more time, but I believe your work, Scott, grows like that ripple. Because once the day 2, day 3, day 4 of that veteran who killed himself, that ripple goes away. And people are just left there scratching their head to wonder why.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, I feel like when that that ripple effect, that those other people who are connected to that, those 50 people who might be connected to that one person who are affected by it, um, they may not even know when that they have been helped by something like this. And here's why I say that, because until they feel the pain of a loss, they may not know the benefit of the prevention, if you will. And if they never know that pain, um, they they may not even recognize it as having been benefited by that. But I'm okay with that. I would rather have these people never know that
Right.
they were helped, um, if it means that that one person who's in that center of that ripple, chooses to live another day and
Yeah.
and keep
Let me
keep on
let me
going,
jump in
right?
that ripple. When I
Yeah.
when I wrote this book, okay, I got a call from somebody I served with. I hadn't seen him in 30 years. Okay. We go out, we sit down, we're having a lunch, right? We're 5, 10 minutes into the conversation. He says, hey, I read your book. I'm sorry about that. And I'm like, "What? Okay, thank you." And he says, but I got to tell you, I was all set to kill myself until I read your book.
Mm,
No, I'm not gonna. Okay. Okay. Oh, I never saw that coming. All right. Now it's emotional to hear it, but that pebble, that book helped him. Who else has it helped? I don't know. But it instantaneously took the edge off of telling my story
yeah.
just because I know that it helped one veteran. All right. Now, again, I won't know the magnitude of it. I don't care to know, honestly. But when you help that one person, you have no idea how far that ring can grow.
That's true. And I get messages like that from people from time to time, just saying, uh, like, even something as simple as, "Hey, man, I really needed to hear that episode." Whatever that discussion was, I really needed to hear it. And sometimes it's on social media or something like that where they put that out there, and maybe they don't want to necessarily come out and say as much detail as what your friend there said, um, but you gotta think to yourself like, okay, what if they hadn't heard that? When they say I needed to hear that, well, what if they hadn't? What would the effect have been on that person? It couldn't have been a good thing. And so, that's why I keep doing this. I keep putting episodes like this out to help those people. And like I said, even if it's one person for each episode that I put out, this is episode 400 and who knows, 400 something. Like, okay, so there's 400 some odd people that I've helped with episodes like this, and so yeah, I'm gonna keep doing it. As long as that number is not zero, as long as that, the number of people who are taking their lives is not zero, I'm gonna keep doing it, until I can't do it anymore. But I think other people in the veteran community want to do stuff. Maybe they just don't know what to do. Are there other things outside of maybe writing a book or hosting a podcast that people can do to kind of take charge in combating the issue of veteran suicide?
3 words. I need help.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing, and one of the biggest things I'm trying to get fellow vets to do. Don Dunn's book really talks about how he isolated himself and walks us down that journey. I never realized how pandemic it was that we isolate ourselves in veterans as
Yeah.
veterans until I really got into the conversation with him. But if you look at the group of folks like at Hero Stock and what they're doing with veterans music and bands and such. I had the honor of being in Rolla, Missouri here a couple weeks back or a week back now. There's another one coming up in Tennessee and in Nebraska. But all of these things that the veteran groups are doing out there, plug into one of them, plug into a car show, plug into, the Wednesday coffee house meetings, plug into something so that you don't isolate yourself or you don't further isolate yourself, or take a step out of your isolation and come to a veterans event. If you need somebody to go with, reach out to me, send me an
Mhm.
email, give me a call, find another vet, pick up the phone and talk to a friend or a fellow service member and ask for help. I met with another great group who their sole mission with 230, 240,000 volunteers is to go for a walk with a veteran, do whatever they can to help veterans get out of their isolation and have some activity going on.
Yeah. You know, I just mentioned I've done over 400 episodes on this show, and I talk to veterans all the time, and a lot of times, like you and I, before we got on this call and we started talking to each other, we didn't know each other really before today, but a lot of times after just talking to somebody for 5-10 minutes, you start to feel like start to connect with that person. If you can deal with 5 minutes of being a little bit uncomfortable, and you'll be able to form bonds and connections with people that could last for years and years to come. If you can just get out of your own way for 5 minutes. I mean, and I know there's veteran groups that do outdoor activities. Um, they they do all sorts of activities, hobbies, you name it. There are veteran groups out there that do those types of things. If you can find something, I mean, go to Google. That's going to be your best friend in this case. If you don't know where to look, go to Google and just type in veterans, fill in the blank of whatever the activity it is that you're into, whatever, and the location that you're in. Um, there's going to be something. Maybe not immediately in your city, but within the close enough vicinity, you'll find something, and just go and try it out. Like, what's the worst you got to lose? Maybe an afternoon of, man, this wasn't for me. Okay, well, try something else.
With another vet, by the way, right?
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, that's what I mean. Like, even if you don't know anybody else in your area. Maybe you're in that isolation where you're just so tuned out from everybody who's around you. Um, find these these groups that are around you and that have other veterans there, and just go get involved with it, and give it a shot. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, one of the things that far too many of us as veterans have suffer with, and that's loss and lack of trusting,
Yeah.
right? I can't trust the VA, right? I don't care. I don't care if they fired everybody there and started over. I still wouldn't trust them. And I
Right.
really have a hard time trusting people that are not veterans,
Yep.
right?
That's
And
right.
we naturally are more open around, dare I say it, our own kind, right?
Yeah.
Veterans, right? Look, you can stand there for 10 minutes, 5 minutes around a group of veterans and nobody's talking, and sometimes it just doesn't matter. We've stood in
Sure.
those parade formations around veterans, right? Somebody's going to crack a joke. Somebody's going to say something. The ice is going to break, and then all the good stuff's going to kind of come forward. So again,
Uh,
veteran concerts or veteran church social or
yeah.
outreach. Just another great way to connect.
Yeah, there's someone I had on the show, a few months ago. I forget exactly when it was now off the top of my head, but talking about getting veteran groups set up in churches around the country, and just you got to know that there's other veterans who go to church with you. If that's your thing and you're into going to church, there's going to be other veterans there, pretty sure. And so, yeah, why not get a veterans group together where you guys can meet and be yourselves for a bit, and talk about, the things that are of interest to you, with regards to your faith and, things like that.
Hey,
Those are great.
nobody prays better than a veteran, Scott. Nobody knows how to pray better than a veteran, right?
That's
Dave
right.
Woodard Boot Camp teaches that. Oh Lord, what I get into? Oh the
Right.
Lord, what I get into? Right?
Lo
And there
Lord,
should be
help
a
me
website
now.
going, oh Lord, hurry it up. I'm 29 and awake. Come on
Right,
now.
right.
And of
Yeah,
course, folks,
exactly,
we know how to
exactly.
pray.
Um, I know we could probably keep going for, hours talking about this stuff. It's really, I think, an important, topic here to talk about, and I wanna make sure that the listeners know where to find you and the, stuff that you do. Can you give listeners, any websites, social media, other places that they can go to find your work and the things that you do?
Yeah, sure. Again, thank you for having me on your show, Scott. But if you want to
Sure.
reach out to me, dpaulfleming.com. My author name is D. Paul Fleming. If you go to Amazon, you can find my books, A Date with Suicide, 2,442 Steps to Crazy. If you want to reach out to me, I'm on social media on Facebook at D. Paul Fleming. I'm also on Twitter on D. Paul Fleming. And my fun website is Veterans Wellness on Twitter or X. I don't want to annoy the anointed one, right?
Sure.
But send me an email if you need someone to talk to. If you can't find somebody, if you're having trouble, if you're stuck, you need to find a way to get plugged into the VA. I know how to help you move forward in those things. But survive the day and let's talk again tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll have links to all of that in the show notes, so that the listeners can click through and take a look at what you have going on and get in touch and in contact with you if they want to chat about anything or find out more about your work. Before we wrap this episode up, though, real quick, I love doing this segment whenever I have another veteran on the show. It's a segment I call "Is It Service Connected," and it's basically just watching kind of a funny video of service members doing things that are kind of stupid. Oftentimes, machinery and things like that are involved, and people run away screaming, that type of thing. It's kind of an America's Funniest Videos type of moment where funny things happen, and then we can laugh about it and make fun of them and all that kind of stuff. The way I think only veterans can, in this kind of situation. So I'm going to share my screen with you real quick here so we can take a look at this. And for the listeners who are audio only listeners, I'll try to describe it as best I can, but your best bet, go on YouTube or wherever else you can find this video uh, and check it out there. Right now, it looks like there's a crane that's lifting up a tank of some sort. The video's a little bit grainy, so I can't tell exact details. I wasn't much into the tanks anyways, but let's take a look and see what happens here. So it looks like it's swinging it around. There's a couple people on the ground walking, kind of guiding. Looks like whatever's going on with this tank. They're swinging it around to the left side of the truck that the crane's on. So far, spectacular is happening. Until the truck starts tipping. And the whole truck with the crane and everything tips over down a hill, and there goes the tank. I'm hoping that there was nobody on the ground in the way of that tank, because I don't know that they're getting out of the way. That was a pretty damn big tank. But hopefully everybody got out of the way with that. But yeah, that tank just went down, and the crane went along with it. Everything's still attached, I guess. So that was not well executed. I don't think they thought about the load balancing on that when they started lifting that. But anyways, that was definitely a fail on their part. Anyways, thank you, Doug, again, for taking the time to come on the show, sharing your story and resources that you shared with us today. And again, for the listeners, everything will be in the show notes that we talked about. We'll have all those links there so you can check it out if you need it. So thank you again, Doug, for taking the time to come on.
Appreciate being on. Thanks so much, Scott.
You bet. Thanks for listening to the Drive On podcast. If you want to support the show, please check out Scott's book, Surviving Son, on Amazon. All of the sales from that book go directly back into this podcast and work to help veterans in need. You can also follow the Drive On podcast on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts.